Hello, everyone. Welcome back. This is the Blue Line Blast podcast. I'm your host, Jim Biringer, back alongside Matthew Blittner. Guys, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, comment. We are back. It is counting down. Trade deadline time. Everybody's favorite time of year. March 6th, NHL trade deadline. Got some big names that are out there. We heard rumblings about Robert Thomas, Elias Pettersson. Does Rasmus Ristolainen go? Got some names potentially coming out of New Jersey. We got special guests coming up. Matthew, what's going on, man?
Great to be back as always, Jim. Week after week, we love bringing you guys all of the news around the NHL. And yeah, as you said, it's that time of year, counting down to the NHL trade deadline. Although I do have to push back on something that you said. You said it's everyone's favorite time of year, Jim. I don't think it's the players' favorite time of year.
No, that's true. The players don't like it, but we like it.
We love it.
We love it. We love it. Players don't love it. The players hate it. It's too much speculation.
Media loves it. Gives them something to talk about, write about, whatever. Players don't like it. They gotta sweat it out. Are they gonna move? Are they not gonna move? And then those who do move, now we gotta find a new place to live. I gotta pull the wife and kids out of whatever life they've been living here. There's a lot going into it. And Jim, I'm gonna start us off right here. It looks more and more likely, and it's probably going to take right up until the deadline. It looks more and more likely that Vincent Trocheck to the New York Rangers is going to be on the move. Yeah. On Monday, he spoke with the media, with the Rangers media, and he said, "Listen, I know that this is a reality. He feels that he would handle it a lot better and he handled it when he was traded away from Florida 5, 6 years ago. He wants to go to a winner. He doesn't want to go to a team. If he's going to move, he's not saying he wants to move, but if he's going to move, he wants to go to a winner. He's 32 years old. He wants to go compete for a Stanley Cup. He does not want to go out west. He has a 12-team no trade. He wants to stay east. And, of course, he gave the great comment about, telling his little kids about, trying to prepare them that he might get traded. And his little 7-year-old son said, well, I can stay here, right? I have a hockey team here. I didn't get traded. I'm not getting traded. So, Jim, it's a great response from a 7-year-old. Yeah, Dad, you can leave. I'm staying. I didn't get traded.
That is a great response by a 7-year-old. I think the kid gets it. He gets it. He understands it. So, we know the LA Kings, when they traded for Artemi Panarin, tried to get Vincent Trocheck, but it's not an LA thing. He didn't say no to LA. I think a lot of people like to play in LA. He just doesn't want to be on the West Coast, and he's a big family man. So obviously teams like Seattle, Utah, Colorado, LA, teams Anaheim, teams like that looking for centers out west ain't happening. Now, the real question is Minnesota too far west for him to consider moving to? Because we know the Minnesota Wild made an offer. It's on the table. We know. Is that a place he wants to go? Does he want to waive his no trade clause to go there? Or is it places like Carolina, Detroit? Does Buffalo enter the mix? Does Columbus enter the mix? Does Pittsburgh enter the mix? I don't see Pittsburgh so much because you're not win. I think, Detroit and Carolina, they're there to win now. And if you really want to win now, the Wild seem to have a team that want to win now.
So, you made some interesting points there, Jim. The Wild most certainly are not too far west with Trocheck's own comments at the Olympics. He acknowledged that the Wild are a team in the bidding pretty much. So he definitely does not have an issue going to the Minnesota Wild. The question on my mind is, after giving up what they gave up to get Quinn Hughes, it's not that Minnesota doesn't have the pieces. They have the pieces. Are they willing to give up the necessary pieces? Because let's be honest, if Chris Drury fails and fumbles the bag on the return with Vincent Trocheck, he's going to be out of a job. He's going to be out of a job if he fumbles the bag on a return for Vincent Trocheck, who's under a contract for, I think, 3 more years at a sub-6 cap hit. And he's only 32 years old and is a second-line center. That the price might get a little too high for what Minnesota wants to do. But again, you never know. Bill Guerin has shown that he's willing to take a bid swing when a bid swing is warranted. I don't think Trocheck goes to accepts going to Carolina just because he already left Carolina once. I don't think he accepts going there. Otherwise, he would have stayed there instead of going to
Mhm.
the Rangers in the first place. An interesting one that you mentioned, obviously Detroit is something, but the interesting one would be Pittsburgh. And I'm going to push back. You said, Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's in a playoff spot right now. They would obviously want to fortify with Crosby out roughly 4 weeks. Imagine a team that's now got Crosby when he comes back and Trocheck, who slots in perfectly as a second line center. He's from Pittsburgh, so there's not an issue of,
No.
is it an area he's not going to want to go to? He's from Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Like, he's 1,000% would be okay with that. And Pittsburgh's a playoff team, and if they shore up and get a piece like Trocheck and then maybe another piece, like Jim, I'm not saying that they're going to win a Stanley Cup this year, but they could go on a bit of a run, maybe second or third round, and then build off of that in the following year or two. And again, Trocheck's on the contract for 3 more years. He doesn't have to win the Stanley Cup this year.
No, that's true. That's very fair. I mean, look, and then and Pittsburgh has to determine what they want to do with Evgeny Malkin. Malkin made some comments on Saturday that the agent and his team they're not seeing eye to eye right now. He wants to be back. He wants to retire with Sid. He wants to retire Penguin. But does Dubas want him there? Like, what do they want to pay him? All that stuff. And that's
even more. Look at the 3 centers: Crosby, Malkin, Trocheck.
Yeah,
Trocheck, Malkin.
That's a really nice for a team that wants to retool on the fly and be like Washington. That's a nice 1, 2, 3 down the middle. I mean, I definitely think there are options out there. I definitely think Trocheck's. We had who do we have on? Arthur Staple, right? We had him on.
Yeah.
He said, and we've all agreed, the letter's for naught if you don't do anything outside your UFAs. Like you said, fan favorites have to go. Well, Trocheck's a fan favorite. You just can't trade Panarin and Soucy. Then the letter's for naught.
And in terms of turn the train fan favorite, I mean, Trocheck's the only one without pretty much full control over the situation.
Yeah.
Fox has full protection. Zibanejad's got full protection. Miller's got full protection. Shesterkin's got full protection. Trocheck's the only one without full protection. Everyone wants to yell and scream about the Devils and Tom Fitzgerald handing out no move, no trade clauses like candy. Jim, I think Chris Drury and the Rangers handed out a lot more candy than the Devils did.
Yeah, they did. And it's weird to hear like a guy like Vladislav Gavrikov's name out there, like in rumors. It's like he just signed there. He knew what he was getting into. If he knew the direction of what this team was doing, I'm not sure he's signing with the Rangers. Like it just feels like Gavrikov's there. And you mentioned a guy, Adam Fox, right? He just comes back from his injury, and it's after a tough loss, emotional loss, coming off the break. But he's asked about the letter because no one's talked to him because the Rangers don't make players available when they're on IR. They're not around the team, so you can't get their thoughts. And he basically was like, it was what he didn't say, right? He didn't say he wanted to be a Ranger for life. He didn't want to say, I'm a Ranger. I'm a Ranger now. He's like, look, we're trying to win games. I'm focused on the season. I'm focused on the rest of the season. And that's a conversation we're going to have after the season. And now it's like, yeah, he just wants to talk to Chris Drury, see what the plan is. And if they're going to tear it down, he might be out of there. Like he may not be around for a transition. And to me, and this is my opinion on this, and you could push back because we like to push back here on this program. I said this I was on multiple shows in the beginning of the year, and I said the comments that Mike Sullivan made during USA training camp, where it was asked about Adam Fox, about how he's an elite defenseman, but he has another gear to go to, and we believe he can do it. And it just didn't sit well with me because that's not how a new head coach comes in and deals with players. But the fact that then Fox is left off the USA Olympic roster, they win, there's other comments. It just felt like, again, it's New York, there's other sports. If that was any other market, like Toronto, like Montreal, any other market where a head coach has those comments about a player, it's a bigger story because it's New York. It flies under the radar because of the Jets, the Giants, Knicks, all that stuff. But it feels like it is a big story that the countdown might be on to an elite defenseman leaving New York.
So, Jim, I'm not going to necessarily push back. I'm going to talk out of both sides. I'm going to talk both sides.
That's fair.
We know that Adam Fox grew up a Ranger fan. Facts.
Facts. 100% fact.
It's a fact. We know that Adam Fox didn't want to sign in Calgary when, out of college. We know that he didn't want to sign in Carolina. We know that he only wanted to sign and play for the New York Rangers. These are all facts. He's done multiple interviews about it. These are not, well, that's what the rumor was. These are facts. They're undisputable facts. He obviously has a long-term contract. With all the trouble he went through to get to the Rangers, I don't know that he's willing to cut bait and leave at the first sign of trouble. However, there's a couple things to this now on the other side. One, I don't know that he wants to stick around in a long, elongated rebuild. If Drury somehow sells him on, it's going to be a quick turnaround, again, I think his love for the Rangers as a kid is going to win out. But a big problem, they traded away Fox's best friend, not just on the team, but like in life, who he's played in the U.S. national program with since they were like 13 years old. Their locker stalls were right next to each other for years with the Rangers, and Ryan Lindgren. They were constant defense, they were a constant pair on defense. And obviously the Rangers had to make their move to trade Lindgren. I get it. They were worried about him becoming the next Dan Girardi, in terms of body breaking down from how hard he plays. So I get why they traded him. But you took away Fox's best friend on the team. And yeah, he's friendly with some of the other guys, but Trouba's gone and Kreider's gone too. You took away his best friend. And then you throw on top the Team USA snub. And Jim, you want to talk about the comments that happened? Mike Sullivan's, they're whiskey drinkers and milk drinkers, and this was a room of whiskey drinkers thing. Which, by the way, I mean, you want to talk about a colorful, where the hell did that quote come from? That's a whole other discussion. I think that Fox legitimately does not feel welcomed by Mike Sullivan and Chris Drury, but more Sullivan than Drury, because Drury's been here for a number of years. I think if the rebuild, retool, whatever you want to call it, is going to be a long one, as in more than 2 years, which it probably will and probably should. I think Fox at that point then says, I have a coach who I don't think likes me, and they trade away my best friend. I'm ready to go. And I believe he's got full protection, at least through next season, I believe.
Something like that, yeah.
I can see him pulling a Panarin in terms of, okay, yeah, Chris, you want to trade me? I'm open to be traded. I'm only going to this one team. That's it. And that's what he'll do. He'll try to stick it to the Rangers as a show of defiance. So look, I covered Fox early in his career. He's got a bit of that streak in him. It's the same streak that helps him be one of the best defensemen in the game from a points perspective, year in and year out. He has that streak in him a little bit, and I wonder if he says to Drury after the season, listen, I know I'm not welcomed here. I don't want to be here. Here's the one team I'm willing to go to. Make it happen. And that's it.
No, that makes sense. 100%. I think, and Fox's history has shown that, right? Like you said, you documented it real well, and it is documented. He wasn't signing in Calgary draft, and he wasn't signing Carolina. Carolina trade. We know the history of there. But you mentioned the comment. I think this is a bigger story than maybe most people are making it out to be. But again, in New York, you have to compete with a lot of the media, and they talk about the NFL all the time and this and that. In the hockey world, I think it's starting to grow some legs. Yeah, I do agree with you. I think Adam Fox does feel unwelcome from his head coach. I think it started with the comments at the beginning of the year. It's carried over. And, he wasn't around the team when the letter came out. He was injured. And look, it's going to be a conversation moving forward about what happens with Adam Fox with the New York Rangers. it just seems like they can never keep the distractions out of the room. And it continued into this year with the Rangers, Matt. And, look, it'll be interesting to see what they do come Friday in regards to not only Trocheck, but maybe a couple other players on their roster. But again, New York never disappoints when they, with the news that they always have out of their team.
Well, Jim, before we head to our non-existent sponsor break, and of course we have a great guest, Rob Aitken Jr., who covers all things New Jersey sports, including the Devils. I want to bring up one last point right here. So, Jim, with all the things that are going on with Fox in that situation, and you bring about how, the distractions in the room, it's no wonder that the Ringling Brothers Circus was always being held at Madison Square Garden. Now, it hasn't been in here, but it used to kick the Rangers out of the Garden in the springtime during the playoffs, and now the Ringling Brothers Circus still lives there. It's just run by the Rangers front office instead of elephants and monkeys and chimpanzees and high wire acts and all that stuff. But Jim, that's what I've got to say on that. That's my blast from the blue line. And let's go to our non-existent sponsor break. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. That was our non-existent sponsor break. Jim's got the mud right there. There's more Blue Line Blast podcast. I'm Matthew Blittner. That's Jim Biringer. And of course, our special guest of the evening, Rob Aitken Jr., who is a sports writer for the Record Sports in North Jersey, part of the USA Today. Pretty much there's nothing that he doesn't write about in the New Jersey sports scene. Rob's been covering the Mets, the Devils, you name it, he's here. Rob, how you doing tonight?
Relaxing for once. That's something I don't get to say a whole lot, but I'm sitting here in my apartment and not running out and about just about God knows anywhere.
Well, it's always good to get some relaxation, but we won't be relaxing for long because the NHL trade deadline is this Friday at, I believe it's 3 o'clock.
3 p.m. 3 p.m. Trades can be in the queue at 2:59.
Right.
But you get them in at 3, no good.
Right. So, Rob, I guess we'll get started here. The New Jersey Devils, disappointing season the way it's gone. Who, if any, are you expecting to be traded away from the team?
I know there's a lot of popular names that are out there. People want to see the Dougie Hamilton saga finally end. People want to see some of the expiring contracts get out there. I had a story on NorthJersey.com over the weekend that suggested no one should move. It should stay the way that it is because this is a crucial offseason that the Devils are going to have. And the first decision that needs to be made is who the general manager of this team will be going forward. And I believe that whether that decision is for it to be Tom Fitzgerald moving forward or for a replacement to come in, that person should have all the tools at their disposal. They should be able to look at all of the possible scenarios for trades. And if you look at the names that are out there for other teams, I quite frankly don't know what the market really would be for Devils players right now. People like to talk about what Tom Fitzgerald has done in terms of no movement clauses, no trade clauses. Some of those do free up in the offseason over the summer. They go from full no trade clauses to partial no trade clauses. So I don't think the time is now to make a desperate move. To Tom Fitzgerald's credit, I don't think he is a general manager desperately trying to make a move to save his job. I think he understands maybe that it's best to just kind of sit pat, not really do anything, minor moves, if anything.
All right, Rob, I got to bring you back to last summer, though.
Sure.
We were all there. We all heard it. The roster's not going to be the same. There's going to be tough decisions to be made with this roster. We're not bringing back the same team. We know they tried to do some things, but this roster is pretty much the same, minus the bottom 6. And in my opinion, the guys that left, we all knew were going to leave on the bottom 6. They didn't make the tough decision, and it kind of cost them maybe a franchise player that could have come in from Vancouver who is now in Minnesota. Is that fair to say?
It is and it isn't. In my opinion, I don't really know what package Fitzgerald could have come up with that was going to top what Minnesota was able to put together. Sometimes I think it's also the moves that you don't make that become important things. Let's be real. Tom Fitzgerald maybe has not had the best track record in terms of drafting, but I think his calling card since he's been the man since 2020 has been the fact that he's been able to make some trades. The Timo Meier trade and not trading away Alexander Holtz was a big deal. It was praised across the league when it happened. So as much as Quinn Hughes becoming a Devil seemed like the foregone conclusion, it just really feels like Minnesota had the assets. They wanted to make the push now. And it doesn't mean that Quinn Hughes will never be put on a jersey, a New Jersey jersey. Not the Jersey jerseys, but you know what I mean. It's just a matter of time. And when free agency comes around, I think it's not a done deal, but there will have to be some work. And whether that is Fitzgerald in that role or someone new that comes in, that will be a statement moment for whoever the GM is at that time.
Now, Rob, at the Devils just the other day, you and I were having a similar discussion about, players who might leave, players who might go, should Tom Fitzgerald hold on to them. According to Puckpedia, here's the players who are on expiring contracts for the Devils, okay? You've got Evgeny Dadonov, who obviously has not worked out, just injured most of the year, unrestricted free agent. I'm sure they were expecting him to be, around 20 goals. Injury-wise, if he even get 5 goals this year with how little he's playing. Arseny Brixic obviously needs a new contract. He's a restricted free agent. He's not going anywhere. Luke Glendening is going to be an unrestricted free agent. I don't really think that he's, it doesn't really matter. You can find another Luke Glendening. Zach McEwen, again, same thing as Glendening. Paul Cotter is a restricted free agent. And then the big one is Simone Nemec, who's a restricted free agent. Even if Fitzgerald is not the GM, which I'm going to call it 50-50 right now, just to be safe, wouldn't it be smart to at least trade for, a 5th-round pick, trade Glendening for a 5th rounder, trade McEwen for a 6th rounder, see if maybe you can get a 3rd rounder or a 4th rounder for Dadonov. That way, at least you give the incoming GM some extra draft capital to either package for other things or to, use themselves.
I mean, in a perfect world, yes, you would do something like that. I don't know if we live in a world where Glendening is going to get a 5th-round pick. I mean, that's wishful thinking, of course, when you say that. There are bigger names that are out there. There are more desirable names that are out there that I really don't think, unless there's just – and I know that the West can be a mess, because a lot of those teams have a shot, but if they were in the East, they wouldn't have a prayer, just the way that the point totals are going. There are a lot of people that are maybe fake contenders right now. They kind of think that they're in it, and maybe you get someone that's desperate. I don't know if anyone's desperate enough for those kind of names. As far as the roster construction has gone, I think if you asked around the league when this roster was put together, a lot of people would have said Tom Fitzgerald did a good job. He brought in, tougher guys, bigger guys, guys that had experience, guys that, if they worked together, things were going to work. And early on it did, until it didn't. And you can only do so much in terms of overhauling that roster. And I think that will be something that gets done. But ultimately, someone has to pay for this. And I think that's why, even though I think that Tom Fitzgerald did a good job in building this roster over the last 6 years, when things don't work, someone has to answer for it. And it could cost Tom Fitzgerald his job.
Yeah, and, stay on the roster construction for a minute. I mean, I think, like, the biggest thing when you look at this team, obviously, over the last little while, outside the output in St. Louis, they can't score goals. They're averaging, like, 1 goal a game. And you look back, you moved Tyler Toffoli at a deadline where you say you were going to trade him for nothing. And then you haven't replaced his production, and you think certain guys could do it. Is that, like, whoever the general manager is, whether it's Tom Fitzgerald, whether it's somebody else from the outside, is that one of the biggest needs do you feel the Devils need moving forward?
Absolutely. I think you need to have people that match up properly with the scorers that you have. Does Jack Hughes have that teammate on his line that he's able to work the best with? I don't know. We saw a phenomenal year for Jesper Bratt last year. Then he went for some surgery. He went for a procedure, I should say, over the summer, which was something he just kind of put off for a while. It was not like it was a necessary thing. It was just time for that to happen. And I don't know if he's really been the same since then. So maybe he needs a little bit more time to get himself better. But when you do, that you don't have all the reliance upon Jack Hughes, Jesper Bratt, Nico Hischier, that you can have Timo Meier, who we know this is Timo Meier's month, everyone says. Where you look at it, it's January, February, then it's Timo Meier, then it's April. You just need other people that can come through, because being in the bottom 5 in goals scored is not what this team is built for, not when you're built for speed, not when you are putting offense in front of defense, which is not something that Devils fans are really used to, which I think is why there's such pushback when things don't work the way that things haven't worked.
Now, with everything that we're discussing here about, finding the right chemistry, finding the right line mates, that they should have been better. There was an article in The Athletic today, a very interesting article, ranking the efficiency of the top line for each team in the NHL. And I think it wouldn't really surprise anyone to know that obviously the Devils had the least efficient top line in the National Hockey League. Now, obviously, part of that is, Jack Hughes missed, however many games this year on 2 different injury stints. There's been a bit of a revolving door trying to find a reliable winger outside of Jesper Bratt. So, there are moving pieces to it. But what The Athletic showed from their, advanced stats that they use is that, yes, the Devils have not been efficient, but based upon expected goals, their top line actually has generated the 3rd highest expected goals rate out of any top line in the National Hockey League this year. And yet they are bottom 2 in actual goals for the top line. So that suggests, and The Athletic says it, that they've gotten extremely unlucky. Now, wouldn't it be prudent not to necessarily blow everything up, but you can't stand pat either, but, that suggests that maybe there might be a regression to the mean in a positive in the future.
I would agree with that. And I think that's kind of to that point. You put the pieces together, and on paper, this should work. And for a time, it did work. When it hasn't worked, it's been, 9-0 against the Islanders, kind of bad at times, where this is something that you really have not experienced as a Devils fan, unless maybe you were around in like the late 80s Mickey Mouse Club, kind of era, in terms of offensive lack thereof. But that was also a whole different game back then, I think everyone would agree, where you didn't have to score 3-4 goals to win every single night in the NHL. The pieces are there, and that's why you do have to credit someone like Fitzgerald for putting it together. You got to put the right combination together, and when the players fail you and they're in long-term contracts and they're harder to move, well, then who's going to be the casualty of that? That's when you start looking at management. That's when you start looking at the front office. And that's why I think that there certainly is a hot seat for Tom Fitzgerald, despite the fact of what he did put together. So, yeah, I do agree with you. To get back to your point, the pieces were there. They have not come together the way that they really should have. And there is a lot of unluckiness involved.
Yeah, I mean, you saw it I think when they came out of the break, Jesper Bratt breakaway miss, Nico Hischier breakaway doesn't score. I mean, just some of the bounces have gone their way, and obviously they want to play, defense first, and I get that. You want to play a stronger game, a physical game. You want to have depth and all that, but it just feels like it's taken away. And I know Sheldon Keefe has said that, there's no conflict with systems. It's him and all that. I just go back to his days in Toronto with the guys that he had and the up-tempo that was being played in Toronto, still keeping the defense and what they were able to do in playoff series. It feels like it's a complete different system, and they're also relying on their goaltending way too much. And I think that's part of the reason why Markstrom has struggled. At times, Allen has struggled, both of whom have played well out of the break, let's be honest. But it feels like the system is just not fitting the style of players they have.
You're right. It has not. We have not found the right combination for what we have in front of us in terms of what makes the Devils work the best, and it has left goalies out to dry in the past. Matt and I have talked about a story that will be left in in my recycle bin. It's not something that will come out, but I was trying to come up with a statistic out there, and I kind of came up with, believe it or not, no one actually follows this, the goals allowed among your first 5 shots. So put it all together, like the first 5 shots that you allow, how many goals are you letting in? And believe it or not, the Devils are not the most in the league, but they are in the top 5. And when you see other teams that are there, it's the Flyers, it's the Golden Knights, believe it or not. I believe the Hurricanes actually lead the league in the most goals allowed within their first 5 shots. But they're also a team built much differently. And they can kind of lead themselves back. When you are an up-tempo team like the Devils and you give up a goal early, it's like a baseball team, because we are getting into spring training and stuff, giving up first inning runs. Now you're not playing for that first run. You're playing for at least 2. And the pressure kind of mounts on you when you're down 1-0 early and you're a fast-paced, up-tempo team. You're trying to score 2 goals at once, and you can't do that because you're deathly afraid if you don't get that next goal and you're down 2-0, this game's over. And I think if you're a Devils fan, you felt that a lot where, okay, it's 1-0, we're still in this. If we get a goal and it's 1-1, it's fine. When you go with that second goal and you're down 2-0, you start seeing people leaving the seats at Prudential Center because they feel like, well, 2 might as well feel like it's 30.
And that's a great point, and I'm so glad that that's the stat you went with instead of our now defunct whoosh rate stat from when we both covered the Mets. Airplanes per hit by the Mets. What a wonderful time. But Rob, I'm going to build off of Jim's question a little bit here. If the system's not fitting, and if Tom Fitzgerald does go, what do you see as Sheldon Keefe's potential fate? Would he go, would it be, okay, Tom Fitzgerald's fired and Sheldon Keefe is fired? Or do they bring in a new GM and the new GM decides, okay, we're going to move on? Or does the new GM then keep Sheldon?
I think there's a lot that goes into it because, first of all, one thing you do have to remember about Tom Fitzgerald's job title with the Devils, he's not just the general manager, he's the president and the general manager. So that's a lot more you have to replace. Now, if you want to keep Tom Fitzgerald on as president and he's not general manager anymore, I don't know how happy he'd be about something like that too. So you could be having to replace him with 2 different people. And then it's up to that general manager to decide. I believe that Sheldon Keefe is a fine coach. I think he's one of the better coaches that are out there. I think they are playing for him, despite what some people might want to say. But that's the general manager's decision, ultimately. At the end of the day, and I've said it in other sports, when you hire a general manager, usually that general manager needs to have the right about who their coach or manager is, and they shouldn't necessarily be tied together. I know that there's reports out there that Fitzgerald and Keefe are basically tied together, and if you want to do one fell swoop and pull the Band-Aid off and, clean house, and then you need to replace them with 3 people, fine. I understand that. I believe that the general manager position for the Devils with the talent that's currently on this roster is a more desirable job than some other places in the NHL that are going to have openings in the offseason. So I would hate for the Devils to cost themselves a quality general manager candidate by saying, well, you got to hold on to the coach. I think that that's his decision or her decision. It could be a female general manager. We've seen, females coming up in the NHL, and it's going to happen one day. Could happen with New Jersey. Who knows? But whoever that general manager is, I think that ultimately has to be their decision whether or not Sheldon Keefe goes, and it should not be necessarily tied to Tom Fitzgerald.
Yeah, similar to what we saw with the Islanders, right? When Matthew Jarvis came in, he took his time with Patrick Waugh, and then he ultimately kept him on because I think everybody wanted to see what Waugh was like without Lamoriello there. But I had a follow up to we were talking about before the system and everything and how the style of play, right? I've noticed this since the Carolina series in 2023. It feels like the Hurricanes have put the playbook out. on how to beat the Devils' up-tempo system, clog up the neutral zone. It just seems like New Jersey is stubborn in their ways, and Sheldon has said this. He said, we're stubborn. We got to learn to adjust. We have to learn to do things. It just feels like the book is out on how to beat this team, and the players need to figure out how to adjust to what the bigger teams are doing in the neutral zone.
I mean, I would argue that the book's always kind of been out for how to beat the Devils, even going back to like their glory years in the 90s. I mean, they changed the rules because people couldn't figure out ways to beat the Devils, you know? So to your point, yeah, I think that there is some stubbornness there. And, you know, maybe there's a right combination and there's a right personnel that makes that work in spite of that fact. But, yeah, there does need to be, you know, hockey IQ in your mind to say, okay, they're expecting me to do this, so we can zig when everyone expects us to zag as well.
Great point there, Rob. And, you know, before we let you go, we're going to do something. We have something right now that is breaking news. We do have breaking news. I wish we had some sort of alert that we could put up, Jim, but we have breaking news right here on the Blue Line Blast podcast. A signing has been announced. Rob, you're part of the news. You're the one who's breaking the story, so take it away.
I love being able to break news, and I thank you guys for giving me the opportunity. There's your breaking news graphic right there. Wonderful. There is a signing because I will, for the very first time in my career, be joining the Brooklyn Memorial Cup charity game. So
there we go.
You got me.
The BK Americans this year in the Brooklyn Memorial Cup for Alzheimer's in their 8th year have finally managed to come to terms with Rob Aitken, who will be playing on the sports media team in, you know, to help try to find cure and raise money and awareness for Alzheimer's research. Rob, speaking on behalf of the event, glad to have you. You know, now if we can work on my co-host over here, that'd be great. But Rob, glad to have you there. And do you have any words that you want to say before we go to our next non-existent sponsor break? Sure.
One quick thing about the game. Obviously, thank you for having this for the number of years that you have had. Alzheimer's is something that has affected my family personally, so there's a personal tie for me. So I'm honored to be a part of this. So thank you for having this. NorthJersey.com, we do have a Devils section. I know if you go on there, you might see a Rangers section in there and not necessarily a Devils section. I assure you the stories are there. Keep reading, keep looking at all that stuff. We will be working on stuff. And if you're following me, I also do all the high school coverage in New Jersey. Next Monday, Prudential Center, 4 state finals, public, non-public, co-op, and the girls, including possibly, depending on how the semifinals go, a Morristown beer team coached by the Bruce Driver at Prudential Center. So come out. It might be, for my money, the best day in high school sports throughout the entire state.
100%. I 100% agree with that, Rob. 100% agree with that.
Yeah, you heard it all here, folks. Go out, do everything that Rob just said, and we'll be back with more Blue Line Blast podcast after this non-existent sponsor break. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back from our second non-existent sponsor break of the show. Of course, you know, that was a great New Jersey Devils and hockey conversation with Rob Aitken Jr. Go follow him. Of course, you know, great breaking news, of course, as well. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it's that time of year. Teams that are underperforming, they like to fire their coaches. The LA Kings fired their coach. They've named him interim coach now. Jim, why don't you give us your analysis first? You know, instead of me doing the analysis first, why don't you give your analysis first on this move? Because it's not like the Kings are out of the playoff picture entirely right now.
No, they just hit a few points out, and it's a weak Pacific Division. But after a win, they fired head coach Jim Hiller, and I think, in my personal opinion, this should have been done in the offseason of last year after they lost to the Edmonton Oilers for the umpteenth time. It just feels like, you know, LA is doing things backwards. Probably should have won. They didn't. Their system, their style of play just doesn't fit with the players that they have. Hiller's just been doing the same things over and over again. And I think one of the big criticisms of Jim Hiller was he didn't use the depth that was on the roster. Sammy Elenius is there. Brant Clark's ice time. And he just relied on 2 lines and 4 sets of D in the playoffs last year, and it really hurt them. And there were rumblings about Jim Hiller in December. There was thought maybe Pete DeBoer was going to come into LA and change things. Doesn't feel like he was going to LA. He wants to go someplace else. But the LA Kings make the coaching change right after Artemi Panarin gets there. They kind of want to play this high tempo, this game. But Ken Holland's the GM. It just makes you wonder what's going on in LA. They need a center. They need some more scoring punch. They had to change something because their style of play just didn't mesh in the playoffs. And now they're looking for a head coach. DJ Smith's the interim. Matt Green's been promoted to run power play, assistant, all this stuff. So it looks like they've got the bench set for right now to get a playoff push in there. But to me, they gotta find an established coach that can run an offensive, proactive system. Because for far too long, the LA Kings have been reactive. And that's a big part of why Jim Hiller is no longer the head coach in LA.
Great analysis there, Jim. I agree with everything you said. And, normally when you think about what coaches could come in to replace, on a full-time basis, not interim, you normally have a decent list of guys to start off. But there are a number of teams who could potentially change over their coaches in the offseason. I don't think we see, maybe we see one more. I don't think we really see any coaching changes for the rest of this regular season. The way the season is going, I really don't see it happening. But
what do we got? 2 this year now, right? 2 or 3? 2, at least 2 I know of recently. Well, Rick Bowness is in Columbus now.
Right.
And now the DJ Smith moved Jim Hiller.
Right.
And we thought Barry Trotz was going to remove Andrew Burnett in Nashville and they never did it.
Right. So I don't think we see any others in. We might see an assistant coach fired.
Yeah.
I mean, rare as that still is.
Yeah,
we might see something like that. I don't think we see any more head coaches fired during this season. But Jim, there are a number of teams who could potentially change their coaches in the offseason. Just off the top of my head, Fred Berube could be out in Toronto. Sheldon Keefe could be out in New Jersey. Mike Sullivan might be out in New York. I think it might be a little early for them to pull the trigger on that. But, if Drury goes, then Sullivan would go in that one. Florida, as crazy as it sounds, is going to have to reassess. I mean, yes, they got hit by the injury bug. It's very difficult to win in 3 straight.
I don't see Paul Maurice leaving.
Paul Maurice could decide, I want to step down, not necessarily be fired.
Yeah, I don't see it, though. I think they want to do something there.
We'll see what shakes out. Unfortunately, if Detroit doesn't make the playoffs, what do they do?
Well, they might get a new general manager if they don't make the playoffs.
Right, and if they get a new general manager, new head coach probably.
I got one for you. What about Edmonton? Chris Knobloch.
I can see Knobloch going, and if the Oilers fall short again, I can see him going.
What about? I got one for you. What about in Utah if they don't make the playoffs?
The problem is Bill Armstrong is a pretty conservative general manager.
I know.
And we don't know enough about Ryan Smith as an owner.
Right.
In terms of hockey. We don't know enough about him as a hockey owner to say if he's quick trigger, or if he's patient. So
real quick, I had heard at the beginning of the year, and I think it was Tyson Nash, their radio guy, their color guy, was on a radio.
Tyson Nash, their TV color.
Yeah, their TV guy. They said there was a lot of pressure on Andre Tournier this year at the beginning of the year to get off to a good start and get this team playing the right way, or else he could have been moved. He could have been out the door early, and I think there was pressure on him to make the playoffs.
Right. Well, Utah, I think, is holding down a wild card spot.
Yeah, they're holding down a wild card spot right now, but I think there was a lot of pressure on them to get into the playoffs this year.
Right. And look, I'm not saying that it can't happen. I'm just saying we don't know enough about ownership.
Right.
In terms of, because they don't have a track record. So
they don't. We know what Arizona was, but this is a completely different franchise, and Ryan Smith's a better owner than any owner they had in Arizona.
Right. So it's difficult to determine whether ownership would be pull a quick trigger there or not. And we know Bill Armstrong is a conservative general manager. So, I can't see him pulling the trigger on firing Tournier unless directed by ownership, or if the bottom just falls out between now and the end of this regular season, which I don't think it's going to happen. Because
I don't think so. I think Utah really good team this year. I think, and they want to add at the deadline. So I personally think that he's fine, but I just wanted to give a backstory on it because I think there was definitely some pressure on him earlier in the year.
Right now, Jim, who I'm about to say, there's no chance that this coach gets fired. 0.
Mm-hmm.
But I wonder if his team falls short again, if he doesn't think about potentially stepping down. Rod Brindamore in Carolina.
Ooh, that's a good one.
He's a very prideful guy.
He is.
Very prideful. He's a winner. Great.
We know he's a winner.
Right. How many years now is it going to be where they hit a brick wall in the playoffs? They don't get over the hump. He's Teflon. There's no chance that they fire him.
No.
0. But he's a very prideful guy. I think it's a non-zero chance that if Carolina does not at least get to the Cup final this year.
Yeah, they have to get there this year.
That he at least contemplates stepping down, saying, "I just can't take it anymore. Someone else has to take over this team."
Yeah, I mean, I could see it. I mean, I know he just signed that extension a couple of years ago, but I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, this team continues to fall short in the Eastern Conference Final when they get there, and it's not like they're. I mean, the one year they lost games in overtime, so it doesn't. I mean, again, they lost in 4 straight, but it didn't feel like 4 straight. But I do know, I do know that I could see it. I know he fought hard for his assistants to be there, but it feels like this is the year Carolina can get there. But I do agree, if they fall short, I think he could step down. I don't see a coaching change in Washington. I don't know what to make of Buffalo. Like, Lindy Ruff's in his last year of his contract. Like, unless he's moving up into the front office, like, who's taking over as the head coach in Buffalo?
Honestly, I think that they give Ruff, if Yarmo likes him, and by all accounts he seems to, at least from what we've heard out of Buffalo so far since Yarmo took over.
Right.
What was it, in December?
Yeah.
I think he potentially gives Lindy a 2-year contract extension. Because you don't want to give a 1-year extension.
No, because then he's in the same position again.
And then it's lame duck, and it just creates stories and a distraction and everything. Gives a 2-year extension, and one of two things happens. Either the Sabres continue to get better next year, in which case the second year becomes, you already talked about extending them beyond the last year on the deal. Or the wheels fall off, and he says, okay, well, screw that last year. We're firing him anyway.
Right.
So, one of those two things will happen. But I think right now, and I mean, it's hard to argue that Lindy Ruff has not earned at least a 2-year contract extension.
I mean, yeah, I would think he would earn some. But again, it all depends on if he wants to coach, because the goal was to get it to this year, to get it to somebody else. And he can go up in the office and help that way too. So, I mean, unless he wants to remain behind the bench, which it seems like everybody, they're playing for him, and the guys like to be around them, I don't see why you don't give him an extension.
I mean, hey, it's not just the players. The Buffalo media loves being around them too.
I know. I mean, he's brought. Look, I never understood the hire. I didn't like the hire. Going back, retread, all that stuff. They're winning now. Buffalo's winning. So again, it's all right. However, I do think that that could be something to look at. It all depends at the end of the year with Buffalo, Scott O'Neill, Winnipeg. Like, I think, yeah, there's a lot of options out there. But I do agree with you. I think Craig Berube is definitely gonna be looked at come the end of the season. That means Brad Treliving is going to be looked at the end of the season as well. So there's definitely going to be some openings that we're going to be talking about here on the Blue Line Blast podcast. That's for sure, Matt.
Oh yeah, we've got our summer. We don't take any breaks.
No,
summer is going to be. We might have more breaking news things during the summer than we do during the regular season.
Hey, but we had one tonight.
We did have one tonight. And we might have some more breaking news later this week.
Yeah, we might. We just might. You never know. Maybe that banner will come out one more time.
1 more, 3 more,
4 more. Who knows? Yeah, who knows? But guys, Blue Line Blast podcast here for you. Jim Biringer, Matthew Blittner. Thank you to Rob Aitken for coming on, talking New Jersey Devils trade deadline. And check it out up on YouTube. Follow along, subscribe, comment below. We'll see you soon and see you at the trade deadline.